Hi Taylor, using your photo project as a way to get to know the Tri-Cities a little better, definitely a good idea. And you came up with some very interesting images all around town. Now, you used Illustrator, which is definitely not a traditional photo editing tool, although you can edit some photos in there, as obviously you did. And you used Photoshop. You used them in a way that I think pushed the images past photography into illustration. And I don't know that there's really any sort of a defining line between the two, but the further you get away from a photorealistic kind of image towards something like this where you've got some artificial colors added for sure, artificial textures, then you're probably pushing it more towards illustration. That's fine for this project. I didn't really assign any limit on what you could do as far as how you pushed. And I think it's just an important kind of distinction as you consider your images. Looking through, I definitely like the repetition that we see here, not only within the individual frame, but then also you get it within the panels themselves with the different filters applied. The second one here, this one, as you mentioned, I guess in your essay, almost takes on a painterly quality in the way that you have your colors. We certainly, I think of all of them, this is the most towards photorealistic. However, going with the super saturated colors, you've added a little bit of texture. All of those things kind of emphasize the painterly quality of it. When you're doing something like this, where you really want the final aesthetic more than the image itself, what I would recommend that you consider is doing a little bit of selective editing. In this particular example, I would argue that everything here in the scene is adding to the overall aesthetics, but having just the bare tree limbs kind of dragging to the top is kind of the exception of that. And so for something like this, I would go ahead and just get rid of that before you start applying effects. One of the easiest way to do that, and when you're adding these kind of effects, you don't have to be super careful about it, is just go ahead and use the clone stamp. And so you can quickly knock out big chunks of this. Even if you're repeating some of these clouds, it's going to be fine, because once you render those effects, then you're not going to notice those kind of edits at all. And I think that that's going to give you a much cleaner overall look to start your creative editing process. Here, I think a little bit of texture is welcome, especially here where the sun would have essentially blown out the image. We get this nice sort of embossed look around the trees, and I think that works well. Gives it almost a three-dimensional aspect to your work. Finally, for this one, the false colors that we get here, definitely interesting, and I think this is a really nice vantage point for photographing the Tri-Cities and Kennewick in particular here. Adding in the cable bridge certainly gives you a nice distinctive landmark, and so it allows you to get away with some of these changes and still make it somewhat recognizable. Of course, we can see we can actually read the street signs here, and that adds to that as well. Overall, I think that's an interesting take on the series. I think that your edits were certainly fun and creative. A few tweaks as you kind of go through the process, I think, will help you achieve even more success in creating this kind of imagery. Let me know if you have any questions.